Coming up next on the Union Label will be a conversation with Phyllis Rouse and Judy Yetter about Paducah's tallest building, union built and union managed. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Now, one of you doesn't like to brag on herself, but we're going to make her do it. One of you won a very prestigious award recently for being the manager of these properties, and that person, of course, is Phyllis, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Tell us about the award and how you came to win it.
Okay. We have an annual HUD KHC conference in Louisville.
Now that's Housing and Urban Development, Kentucky Housing Corporation.
Right.
In Louisville.
Right. And we have an annual conference in May. And during the year, form is sent to each property to see if you'd like to nominate like manager or maintenance or resident of the year. And if so, you fill the form out, send it to KHC, and they go through the nominees and make the decision. They narrow it down to 3, so when we went to the conference in May, it was narrowed down to 3 people. And then on the last day of the conference, that's when I was elected.
And the title of the award is what?
Manager of the Year.
For
elderly properties.
In Kentucky?
In Kentucky.
Well, that's excellent. Excellent. And I know you're very proud of that.
Oh, I am.
And,
I am. I was in total shock.
but in a pleasant way. In a pleasant way, too. So, now, you are activities director.
Yes.
What does the activities director do? What activities do you direct?
Well, an activity director at the Jackson House in Sanders is, my main goal is to try to keep them happy, which sometimes can get kind of exasperating. But we have a full line of activities, definitely bingo. We have all kinds of church services. At Jackson House, we have different ministers throughout the community that come and volunteer an hour of their time on Sunday. We have different gospel groups that come in throughout the community that perform at both buildings. Then during the week, we have just all kinds of different activities. I have different people from different healthcare organizations come in and do programs for our residents. We have funny people that come in and do skits and magicians, and so I try to keep a very good variety of activities for our residents to enjoy. I try to keep them busy.
Excellent. Now, Phyllis, tell us a little bit about the history. What we're talking about are obviously 2 buildings. When I referred to the tallest building in Paducah, that's the Jackson House. And then there's the Sanders Retirement Center across the street. Give us a little bit about the history of the Jackson House. And of course, it's related to the Sanders House because the prime mover behind this whole project was the late Bill Sanders. So
yes,
take it from there.
Definitely, Mr. Sanders was a big part of Jackson House and Sanders Retirement Center. And Jackson House was built, it finished in February 1, 1974 with the first residents moving in. Then Mr. Sanders saw another dream, and that's when they thought about W.B. Sanders Retirement Center. It was originally named Jackson House 2, but
right,
then the board and all the unions wanted to honor Mr. Sanders because he had done so much for Jackson House and did do so much for Sanders Retirement Center, so that it was named in his honor. Jackson House is like 19 stories. It has 233 apartments. There's a grocery store and administrative offices on the first floor. In the basement, we have a beauty shop, a laundromat, a library, that's activity director's office, and we have a full-size kitchen that we have a lot of our activities from. We have Meals on Wheels through the Paducah, McCracken County Senior Citizens that's brought into the Jackson House and served out of our kitchen 5 days a week. And residents from Sanders Retirement Center, they come over and share the meal. there. Sanders Retirement Center was built and the first residents entered on October 1, 1982. So, and like I said, that was Mr. Sanders' baby. He was very instrumental in and very active with both properties. He was at least once a week, every week. So he was, and very well loved by all the residents and the staff.
Indeed. You know, an interesting thing about Bill, Bill was born the year that the old Paducah Central Labor Union began. So he went back, and he was, in fact, I looked this up, the oldest active union officer in the United States before he died. And he, I guess, came to work until almost the very end of that.
Yes, he did.
So the unions of Paducah came together and built this, it's a skyscraper, it is.
Yes.
And now the employees, you all are members of United Food and Commercial Workers, Local 227, which
Yes,
is
we are.
headquartered in Louisville. And Phyllis, you were in the local for how many years?
20 years. I was union steward for 20 years.
What makes a good union steward?
Someone that will listen and then will try to be objective about everything. And if there is a cause or you feel like there's something needs to be addressed, but not everything needs to be addressed, and you have to determine.
Sort of a diplomat, I
Yes.
guess.
Yes.
Yeah. And, well, both of you, what has the union meant to you? Of course, I know, Phyllis, you're now in management, but you're still in the union. What does the union mean to you as an individual?
Well, job security. You know, we're treated very well. The union has always been there whenever there has been a problem. They've been, you know, very supportive of everybody. It's just really been a big benefit for us.
And were you in other unions besides USU?
No, this is my first
This is your
time.
first union. So, and were you in the union before, Phyllis? You came?
No, not before I came to Jackson House. But that was one factor that I really fought with when I left the union to go into management, was job security. I mean, it wasn't just a, yes, I'll do it. I really, really had to think about it because I was leaving security, really.
Right.
Job security, I was leaving that. So
Right.
the union's been very great. You know, we have a lot of benefits. They fought for us, insurances and everything, and we're just really, really glad or appreciate the union, even since I'm on the other side, you know, and I don't really see it like that,
Right.
but I can say that we all get along, we do great. There hasn't been grievance since I've been manager, so.
And that's how long?
4 years.
Wow. There are very few job sites that can claim that.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah. Well, now, tell us, you're not from Paducah originally. You're from?
I'm from South Fulton, Tennessee.
I thought so. So what brought you to Paducah to begin with?
West Kentucky. I left Fulton like on a Sunday afternoon. My sister had moved a couple of months before and started in West Kentucky the next day, and in business administration. And
Was that when the campus was downtown?
yes.
The original
On
West
H.C.
Kentucky.
Mathis Drive.
Exactly, the original West
Yes.
Kentucky. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Graduated in 1977 and immediately became manager of what is now Dudley Courts for a couple of years.
So you had a background in housing.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And Judy, how did you wind up where you are?
Well, my father was a railroad man. He worked for the Illinois Central, and I'm originally from Jackson, Tennessee. And we moved here when I was
Where
5.
Casey Jones is, the Casey Jones
That's
Museum,
right. But we moved here when I was 5, so really Paducah's always been my home.
Yeah, so you grew up here.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, describe, well, for example, for the viewers, let's say, how does one become a resident at either the Jackson House or the Sanders Center? What is the procedure? What's the first thing you do?
Okay. The requirements are you have to be age 62 or older unless you're drawing disability. That is the requirements, and the steps are an application has to be filled out, and return, and then we process the application against our tenant selection plan. We have about a 20-page tenant selection plan as to what we require and, you know, the qualifications. So once that's, if the applicant passes that, then we go farther into trying to figure what their rent would be, that the rental process, and that is, you know,
so it's on a sliding scale.
Right. And almost everybody, the rent is different. The rent is based on 30% of the adjusted monthly income.
Which would be Social Security or pension or?
Or any assets on any money in the bank, I mean, any interest on any assets.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
And then obviously availability. Typically, what percentage of your apartments are rented?
Right now, we're probably at 98% at Jackson House and 96% at Sanders Retirement Center. However, we do have a waiting list in both buildings, so they're all pre-leased, and it's been that way for several months now.
Is that an average percentage, or is that higher than usual, or?
It has gotten higher in the last few years. When I started, there were probably about 30 or more apartments at Jackson House that were vacant, and probably 20 to 22 at Sanders Retirement Center. And we've just done a lot of advertising and marketing to get our name out there, and it has helped, because there was a time that Jackson House had a 2-year waiting list at one point. So, and then with other housing, excuse me, with other housing areas opening, then, you know, of course, that was less and less, so they're going other places. But we do have our waiting list back again, and we have our apartments that are full. One day at Jackson House, we didn't have any vacancies. So,
Wow.
yeah.
That's amazing. And of course, the reason the Jackson House was built was because of a shortage of elderly housing in Paducah.
That was it. That was it, the shortage of elderly housing.
And the Sanders Center, how many apartments do you have there?
We have 61 apartments at Sanders Retirement Center, and it was really built because of the meals. When it first opened, there were 3 meals. I mean, you had to take the 3 meals in order to live there. There was a dietitian, and the meals were all prepared there. But I think in about 5 years, that changed to where they no longer had to do that, because most residents just didn't want to. And the purpose of that was to get the people out of their apartment and to socialize and to eat well. But
and that's a concern if you're
Right.
if you have elderly parents or relatives. Yeah, that's exactly the
Right.
socialization part. One of the things you mentioned a moment ago was various medical seminars. Do you find that among the residents there that diabetes is a real problem? Because it seems to be in Kentucky across the board. Diabetes education.
That's one of the biggest concerns that we do have. And we have a lot of residents that are very concerned about their health, and you know, a lot of them, you know, their diabetes is coming up more and more often. So
It sure is.
we're having a big health fair in October, and one of the big things is going to be a big diabetes program.
And I think a lot of people, and I've done a little writing on this topic, a lot of people don't realize the complications of amputations, for example.
Right.
And that one of the basic things is to make sure you don't get a blister on your foot, because that blister can become gangrene, and the gangrene becomes, well, it has to be amputated. And that education is such an important part of that. And you're right about socializing, is to get people out and about and move around and do the activities. Bingo. of course,
Right.
you
Oh,
mentioned,
yes.
is
They love bingo.
yeah, yeah. And Phyllis, you mentioned that there is actually in the Jackson House an original resident. This person has lived in this same apartment since 1974.
yes.
And that person is?
That person is, and I don't think she'd mind me giving her name, and Miss Marzie Skinner. She was one of our first residents to move into the Jackson House. She moved in with her mom, and however, when her mom passed, she stayed. So
In the same
in the
apartment?
same apartment, she's still doing great.
So she's number one in seniority.
Yes, definitely.
Wow, that's amazing. Do the other residents know that Does she talk about, I've lived through this whole thing?
We had a resident appreciation dinner, and we honored her and a couple of other residents who are now deceased, but we honored her as being the oldest, that is oldest by move-in, there at Jackson House. So I won't say that everybody knows, but the majority of the people do know that she was the first one to move in.
One of the things that I've observed in life, especially as I get older, is just how many wonderful stories older people have. Obviously, you would have World War II veterans, all sorts of people living there. Do you all collect stories or hear stories, or that you can you think of any resident that you have that's an interesting story to tell?
You hear lots of stories, and you can just imagine with probably approximately 250 people in the building, we have a few couples, what you do here, I think, well, the resident is not there, but he was what? I'm sorry.
No.
But anyway, he wanted to jump trains, or what was it?
Oh, a hobo,
Yeah.
a professional hobo.
During the Depression.
Yeah, and he did it for years and years, and he was very interesting. And we had a hobo dinner one night, and he would tell, what all he had to do and how he would, we would meet. He traveled from sea to sea. He just went from one coast to the other, and he just loved it. And we have a lot of different residents that when you sit down with them, they're ready to talk. And I mean, we've had school teachers from one-room schoolhouses and just nurses. And it's a wonderful experience to sit and listen to all the information and the history that you can learn from them.
Oh, it would be. And that'd be a great project for maybe the schools to interview people and get them on videotape or at least audio tape, because the stories are amazing. And do you have compile an average age of residents approximately would be?
I think we've checked that, and the average age is about 77. That's the average age.
And are most of the residents, are they widows and widowers, or do you have some couples? You said you did have some couples.
Yes, we do have a few couples, but they are mostly widows and widowers, yes.
Right. And now the apartments, are they all the same size?
They are all the same size. We do have 12 accessible units for mobility impaired persons, and they're made a little differently. But otherwise, they're all just alike. All the apartments are approximately 460 square feet.
And they would consist of?
Living room, dining room combination, walk-in kitchen, bedroom, and bath.
Okay. Yeah, that's and now are the residents free to decorate? Are there any restrictions on decorations?
Well, there's one restriction anyway, and sometimes that's approved. But we have to think about the painting.
Right.
If they want to paint, because sometimes you might see black or red, and that wouldn't work. But we do let them.
Now
put
that
up
would work
border.
in Mayfield, where I'm from. Red and black, that's the Cardinals. So that would be okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but we let them put up border, and they have put wallpaper, and our drapes have to be closest to the window. So if they want their own drapes, they can put them on the inside, so to make it more personal and homey. So.
Well, we had talked earlier about that the Jackson House is perhaps in for a rather large sum of money, as much as $1 million, to renovate the elevators and maybe even add more elevators. Tell us about that project.
Well, that's a project that we're really working toward, and it would be contracted through the city, and Jackson House would be the subcontractor, and we'd be offering a $1 million grant through the state of Kentucky and Frankfurt. So our first step was to be approved for a sub-grant through the city commissioners and the mayor. That has been approved. We have an architect that's going to be down sometime this month to give us like an idea of how much we are talking about with renovating the 2 existing elevators and maybe adding a new freight elevator at the end of the hall. Our application has to be in by November 1, and the decision, we will know whether we will get the grant probably in March. That's when we will find out.
Well, now, Jackson House, I know it's operated by a nonprofit corporation. How is it set up exactly as to who owns it, manages it, and so on?
Okay. It is owned by the three unions, the West Kentucky Building Construction Trades Council and West Kentucky Area Council and the State AFL-CIO.
Three umbrella groups, right.
Right. And it's privately owned, and it is a nonprofit corporation, and it's managed by Beacon Property. Yes, they're the management company. And I'd say it's funded through HUD, but it is owned by
the three unions.
Right.
Well, now, Beacon has other properties that are similar to the Jackson House,
yes,
don't they?
Beacon has several properties throughout the state. I think they said about 75. So they have several properties throughout the state that they manage.
And that is the way that's been that way since the very beginning, since '74.
Not necessarily. No, it was not. We did not have a management. When I came 31 years ago, there was a management company, and then Deborah Wenzel, the previous manager, received all of her certificates and training, and then it was owner managed until Deborah left in 2002. And at that time, it had to be, we had to have a management company again.
Now, you mentioned certification. To do your job, you have to have certain certification to do it?
To be owner managed, where you wouldn't have to have a management company, you would have to be a certified property manager, and that's several stages, different steps, and throughout, that training that you'd have to accomplish that.
So most facilities have a management company that does it, because they're the well, I mean, you think of the laws, the ins and outs of this, they're complicated and they change all the time. You'd be spending your whole time looking through law books.
True.
I suppose, do that. So, well, getting back to activities, in the years you have been there, have activities changed? Have certain things become popular and certain things become unpopular? And do you, obviously you gear this to the interests of the residents, so.
Right. When I came 14 years ago, of course, they were younger. They loved to go out and shop, and they enjoyed that kind of activity. Well, health has declined throughout the years, so that's why we have more in-house activities. And then as we have our younger ones come in that are disabled, a lot of them have their own interests, and since computers have come along, a lot of them have computers in their room, and they enjoy, more staying in their room and doing playing on the internet, playing games. But now also we have a computer center in the Jackson House that if they do not have their computer, they can come down, and it's open the hours that we're there. Then they can, explore on the internet. And we have one of our residents that is a computer wizard, we call him, and he teaches a class there for them. If they have any kind of problems or want to learn how to even turn it on, he's there on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And so it's really become a booming thing with the computers. So the activities have definitely changed, and it's kind of funny to see how interact with the different ages sometimes.
Well, of course, you're absolutely right about computers. I'm 60 years old, and I tell my students that there were no computers when I was in school. That just didn't exist. And we have wonderful programs here at the college where older people come and take computer classes. And it's sort of the nickname is Computers for Grandparents. And it's so liberating, and it's so fun to watch people think, wow, this is really great stuff. And so they're surfing the net all over the building. That's really amazing. And especially, I'm sure, for someone who is, say, in his or her 80s, and this thing is incredible. So,
and the email has really helped a lot of them be able to
it definitely does.
Be in contact with family that lives, throughout the country that they don't ever get to see. So
and it's so much simpler than sitting down and writing a letter and mailing it. And wow, so the computer revolution has definitely hit
Jackson House.
Hit the properties as well. Wow, that's interesting. Any other activities that you said bingo?
Yes, they like that. We have bingo at both buildings. our Residents Association, they run the bingo on Tuesday night at Jackson House. And then residents run the one for us on Monday afternoons at the Sanders building. And we have people from both buildings go across and do
Right.
that. And they just enjoy it. Of course, they don't do it for money. They get toilet paper, paper towels, or goodies, cookies, stuff that they can use in their
important
apartment.
stuff.
Yes,
Right.
And they let us know things that they enjoy getting. But it's a good time for them to get out and socialize.
Oh, absolutely.
And then I have a lot of very good volunteers throughout the community that come in and do things for us. We work very closely with the McCracken County Senior Citizens.
Right.
And this year we won, we are a volunteer site, which all of my residents that work in our library, our gift shop, in the meals programs, they all turn their hours in. We turn them into the McCracken County Senior Citizens Center, and that's how they helps get their grant money. Mm-hmm. And they started an award this year, and we won it for the very first one. It was Volunteer Site for 2010.
Well, that's wonderful.
So we were just thrilled. We were really excited of the residents that we have that volunteer all of their time for the community.
Now, you mentioned the Residents Association. Is that an elective body, or do you run for that?
They elect their president, the vice president, but it's strictly run by the association.
Right, but I mean, they elect their own officers.
Right, they elect their own officers, and then they meet with Phyllis, and they buy things for our building. They've purchased a grandfather clock. They buy flowers. I mean, they work, and it makes them feel more like it's their home when they're able to help purchase something that everybody enjoys.
Is the Jackson House a voting place?
Yes.
It still is?
We have 2 precincts that vote there.
Wow. And then, of course, you've got almost a whole precinct in the building.
Yes.
So what is the exact population of the buildings now? How many live in the Jackson House? How many live in the Sanders Center approximately?
Okay. Right now, I'd say we have 57 at Sanders Retirement Center now, and we probably have 227 probably at Jackson House.
And that's like a little community.
Yes, it
unto
is.
itself. And you said that they often interact. They go
Yes.
in and out. And do people go and visit up and down the hall and on different floors?
Oh, yes. They find out who their neighbors are, and they become very close. And like if we have some that are sick, then they'll take meals into them, go
Just
down
like
and
in
get
a
their mail,
neighborhood.
just like in a neighborhood. Sure do.
Yeah, that's wonderful. We're almost out of time. Give us some contact information, telephone number, email. Do you have a website?
No, not yet.
That's you need to get your computer.
Yes, that's
to
right.
do
We
that
were
thing,
working on
because
that,
I don't
the
know how to do that
management
either, but
company.
I know people who do that are good. So seeking information, they can call.
Yes, they can call the office and ask for Linda Williams is a leasing agent, or of course they could ask for me, but the hours are Monday through Friday from 8 to 4 p.m. The telephone number is 442-7591. And if you'd like to email me, you can at prouse@beaconproperty.com.
Thank you for joining us. We're out of time. My guests, they were Phyllis Rouse and Judy Yetter of the Jackson House Sanders Center. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time.